On behalf of the University Galleries, I want to thank you for coming to our panel discussion, Cultures, Communities, and Their Shared Memories. We have a wonderful group of artists with us tonight, all currently featured in Mangroves to Masterpieces, the South Florida Cultural Consortium, which you can see on display down the hallway in the Schmidt Center Gallery and Public Space, which will reopen tomorrow at 1 p.m. The South Florida Cultural Consortium is a regional initiative in support of the arts, governed by an interlocal agreement among the counties of Broward, Martin, Miami-Dade, Monroe, and Palm Beach. The consortium works to foster cooperation across the South Florida region to help develop and promote the work of cultural organizations and artists and the audiences they serve. Its programs and services range from the visual and media arts program to regional arts education and cultural tourism cooperative ventures. Each year, more than 300 artists who live and work throughout the 5 counties submit their application for consideration for the South Florida grant for visual media artists. The consortium is one of the most successful regional art alliances in the nation, demonstrating that by sharing resources and best practices, the artists can thrive across a burgeoning 5-county area. Of the 14 artists awarded, tonight we have the privilege of hearing from Greko, Sklavounos, Angelica, Clyman, Roscoè, and Kandy, how their works are in conversation with communities, cultures, and shared memories. We will have a Q&A at the end of the panel, so please hold all your questions until then. To get things started, we will hear from Mr. Greko Sklavounos.
Hello.
How's this dancing? How does the light work?
The lights,
Like turning off the lights?
we can turn off the lights.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I know the weather is a little gloomy and it's a Friday, so I appreciate you all being here. I also want to thank Veronique, Phoebe, Helen, and everyone that was a part of helping organize this event and organize the exhibition. So I wanted to start my presentation with this slide because, my practice is I'm a filmmaker, photographer. I have what I consider to be an expanded cinematic practice. So moving image, but outside of that also photography and installation. And talking about imagery and place, I grew up in Miami in South Florida, but my father is from Greece and my mom is from Mexico. Her parents are from the Caribbean, from the island of Cuba. And so I always grew up with sort of the imagery and objects that harken back or speak to different geographies and histories. And so these are some examples of sort of the imagery that I grew up with. But specifically related to my practice, specifically related to my practice, this idea of place is really important. This place being South Florida. When I discovered these maps, which are Köppen climate maps, sort of everything kind of made sense of this place that I grew up in, because there's this running joke that South Florida, Miami, is actually not really like Florida. It's its own thing. And then seeing sort of this like scientific data to back that sensation up really just changed my worldview on it. And so the climate of South Florida is actually related more towards the Caribbean and South Florida, or South America, Central America, and the Caribbean. The philosopher Edouard Glissant had this idea of creolization called it an archipelago. So this idea that different disparate geographies can be connected by a common topography and how everything is sort of connected. And so thinking about this idea of landscape, how it holds memory, this idea of Miami as a city, South Florida really is sort of like site zero of the Anthropocene sort of development, dredged up from the land, from the swampland. Brings me to my first short film, And Beauty It Is Unfinished, where it's an experimental short film that was sort of my first experiment in using documentary methodologies, but also combining with fictional imaginings. So there's a term called hybrid filmmaking, which is sort of the crux of my practice. And so I was really interested in this divided line, and where I grew up in West Kendall, sort of the way it butts up against the Everglades. The idea of how the landscape can connect to Cuba, this idea of the imagination, hearing my grandmother speak of the lands of Cuba that I've never been to, sort of the way that it penetrates into like a mythic space. And so these are some stills. If we have time, I want to play a little clip.
Cuando me siento muy mal, tengo este lugar. Siempre está vacío. Solo yo observando el lugar. Y siempre está esta música de fondo. Es la misma música todo el tiempo. Veo dos hombres.
Stop there. So that was my first sort of go at, I worked with non-professional actors, and I sort of, one of them was from Cuba, and one was, his family was from Cuba, and there was a lot of discussions, and sort of mining of memory, and using the sort of hybrid process. I built a narrative from that. This is my latest project. Going from the suburban, the peri-urban, the outskirts of the city, I went to the urban core. This is a super large infrastructure project happening in downtown Miami. It started in 2019 and it's going to go up until 2027, supposedly. We'll see. But the impetus of this project was me driving through the urban core at night and seeing a group of workers sort of in my peripheral vision, and me wondering sort of like, what's going on here? Like, I want to know more. I want to know, what is this hidden labor happening at night? What is happening in these spaces? And so, these are some behind the scenes of sort of just so you understand the scale of like my production process. Like, I keep things really small. I work with like 3 or 4 people. I really try to integrate a really tight group because we're working in these real spaces with real people. And these are some stills from that short film, which is I'm finishing editing it now. It's called The Fifth Sun or El Quinto Sol, which, thinking of Miami as the city of modernity, this city dredged from, swampland. I couldn't help but think of, this is annoying me. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't help but think of Tenochtitlan, the ancient city in Mexico, and this idea of myth of, the Aztecs believed that the world was created and destroyed 5 times, and we're currently in the 5th iteration of that. And I wanted to speak of this climate crisis, this idea of apocalypse, without being too didactic about it. So, everything is through metaphor and through myth, but also depicting the real people that are working in these spaces through this sort of, visual ethnography, hybrid experimental practice. And I'll play a quick clip of that. That just gives you an idea of a small scene from the film. How am I doing on time?
We're a little more, but it's
Okay, so let me just speak through. This whole idea of it, like, my work, like, I really try to activate the body. It's very about sensation and affect. This is my feature film that I'm working on now. I was gonna talk about it, but just stay tuned. I'm a cinematic arts resident at Blue Light Arts in Miami, where they fund a micro budget grant for feature films, and so I'm moving back out into even further than my first short. So I'm going into the rural lands of the Redlands and Homestead, where sort of like all this capital is exchanged with land workers. But I'm gonna skip over this. And that brings me to the piece that I have in the show, which you can actually see. It's on the outside in the hallway. So it's a triptych. It's an installation of photos with a combination of stills and other imagery of El Quinto Sol, The Fifth Sun, my short film, but also some the one on the left is its own image, and we can talk about it during the Q&A. Do you have any questions?
You're good.
was born and raised in Hollywood, Florida. So being from South Florida really has inspired the type of work that I do and really informed my practice. Just seeing in my lifetime how much development has happened and how much change. And you know, my parents coming here in the 70s and the stories they told me, and my mother visiting since probably the 50s, and then those stories, and like how have things changed? And also memory, because so many of our memories are very much tied to place, and a lot of those places are everyday places, are those mundane places, stores, parks, homes, but those are often the places that don't have like the big plaque on them. So I usually, although I'm interested in the history of all places, even the places that have the historic plaque, most of my work is about those everyday places. So I thought I would just talk about the 4 places that are represented in the show right now. So this is Everglades Gatorland, which was a roadside attraction off of US 27, and it's south of South Bay, or it was south of South Bay. So US 27 was the tourist highway before Disney. That's usually how people would come from up north and visit all these little attractions on their way down. But when Disney opened, not only were people taking different roads, but it was people coming for one big attraction versus all these little things. And so that really changed 27 and kind of hurt a lot of these littler parks. And this was like a roadside zoo. I think you could pet a gator. I never went there. I never went there. I wish I did. It closed in the 90s, so I could have, but I didn't know. I wish I could go back in time sometimes and visit these places. But really, with my work, that's how it started. It started with my memories of places that mattered to me, but that only takes you so far. As I started to make the work and show the work, people would talk to me about places that were meaningful to them, and that's been my newest interest. Actually, right now I'm a resident artist at Baca in Pompano, and we did this event where people could come and talk to me about their memories, and a lot of people were really sort of shy to do it, but one person was like, oh, I don't have any memories of places around here, and then she was like, well, yeah, my dad used to take me to this place called the Little Red Caboose, and you'd eat these sliders, and she was telling me, and afterwards she's like, oh, I feel better telling you that. And then she almost seemed embarrassed, like, what do you care that I ate sliders with my dad? But I'm like, actually, I do. Like, I love that you did that. And maybe I'll make a piece about the Little Red Caboose one day, because it no longer exists. But anyway, back to Gatorland. So I visited this place in, I think it was summer of 2020, and this is how it looked to me in my art here. These are some vintage photos of what it used to look. These are postcards, and I just have some close-ups of some of the individual paintings. So this was kind of a breakthrough piece for me. Prior to this, I was doing a lot of oil paintings, very like then and now, using my photos and my experiences visiting the places and vintage photos. But I had like a really powerful experience visiting this place. Actually, a friend had told me about it. She's a very talented photographer, and she had sent me out of the blue. She just messaged me these really beautiful photos of this abandoned place, and I was like, oh my God, can I use these as painting references? She's like, yeah, why do you think I like almost busted my butt on this slippery floor? This floor is really slippery, taking these photos. And so I was gonna make a piece, but I'm like, I can't, I really have to go visit it first. And so just the whole experience meant a lot to me. And I realized I couldn't just do one painting. I really, I see these places as kind of like people, and I wanted to paint it as a portrait in its environment. And with the whole experience, leaving the city, going into this more like rural environment, and then just having this quiet moment with this place that was being kind of overtaken by nature, but it was also being cared for. You can see how high like the grass is here over all those windows. But if you look this place up, it was explored a lot by urban explorers over the years. It was abandoned for a long time. But if you look at what other people put online, you would see over the years, the grass would grow up all the way to the top of that opening, and then it would be cut. And so someone was actually like caring for this place. And so, just going back there, so I wanted to sort of capture all these views and like the really beautiful architecture and sort of my feelings of this place, and also like the allure of 27. I've done a few pieces of places along 27, and I hope to do more. But these are oil on canvas, and just, you know, a lot of like reclaimed items, using some old maps. A lot of the old US 27 maps were also like misleading maps about that things looked closer than they were and things like that. So I had a lot of fun with those maps. Okay, this piece is my other piece in the show. This is the Sunrise Upside Down House. So this piece I made last year. I received a grant from Broward County to make some works about Broward County places that have changed and that also have a tie to tourism. A lot of my work has a lot of ties to tourism, being about Florida. And so the city of Sunrise in Broward actually started as a housing development. It was called Sunrise Golf Village, and that original part of Sunrise is still kind of known as Sunrise Golf Village. And the guy actually wanted to call it Sunset. That's why there's a Sunset Strip over there. But people thought it was kind of morbid, like you're coming at the end of your life to live here. So he changed it to Sunrise. But he was very inspired by the whole Florida tourism thing, roadside attraction. So he thought, well, let me make a house upside down. It'll make people come, and if you like the upside down one, you can live in one that's right side up. And that's what he did, and it was pretty popular. This photo here is from Life magazine. I had a 2-page spread showing people having a whole lot of fun in the upside down house. And they built it and demolished it 3 times. They moved it around as the development grew. And it's no longer there. It was demolished in the 70s. But I wanted to make some work sort of celebrating that mid-century architecture that is just so familiar to a lot of us in South Florida in general, whether it's in Broward County or Palm Beach or Dade. We've all seen these houses, but we're seeing them a little bit less and less. I really love all that punched concrete, but it's a really different look than what's being made now. I live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of these types of older houses, but some are being very remodeled, some are raised, and then they build like newer constructions. And I wanted to use building materials. I've been lately really experimental with media for me, just trying things out, deciding on the medium based on my feeling about the place. So this one is on a wood panel that kind of mimics, you know, that's the gable, but the part that supports the roof. The part that looks like paper is actually Tyvek, and there's also some metal grates in there, and I love punched concrete. And then this part, which is sort of part 2 to it, I used a salvaged window, and that was pretty fun. And these are all houses that are in that original part of Sunrise, and I picked ones that I thought just had interesting colors and patterns, and also in different states of their evolution. Some, you know, people added columns, they're trying to do things to kind of like modern it up. And so, you know, who knows how long all of those sort of like mid-century architecture features will stay with us. And then on the title wall, there are some of my solar plate prints are blown up on vinyl, but I wanted to show what they originally looked like and where that all kind of came from. So tiled on that title wall, there's two different series. So the first one is No Need for a Postcard. This is a series that I created a couple of years back. I I was a resident artist at IS Projects in the Fat Village Art District in Fort Lauderdale, which is no more. It has been redeveloped to be condos. And I was accepted for an exhibition and a residency with them, and right before it started, I got the call that I would be the last one. And so during my time there, I knew I had to make some work about what was there before it was gone. So often I think about places like, oh man, like when I was 6, like why didn't I know I was gonna be an artist one day and wanna make art about this and like take really good pictures. But in this case, I knew what was coming. So it was really eerie and really sad. But I was just trying to capture what I thought was really unique and beautiful about that place before it was gone. And then I made solar plate prints with those images. I overlaid 2 on top of the other. These are some of them. But just to show like what that process is like. It's a printmaking process, and you can start with a photo, but you could also start with a drawing or a painting or a digital artwork, but you print it on acetate, and then you can get these photopolymer steel-backed plates, and through a process you expose them to the sun, which is what's happening there. You could also use a UV exposure unit, which I've done before, but I really like using like the Florida sun. There's just something special about that. It's more unpredictable, but it's worth it. Then you develop it in water, and then when you're done, you have an etching plate, and you can ink it up just like an etching plate and put it through a press. So all of these are two different images put together, and they're small. They're like 4x6 postcards, and then I usually display them with that postcard stand that I broke, but it was from IS Projects during their moving sale. They're now in Miami, and they're Miami Paper and Printing Museum, and they're awesome, so they are doing good. But it was sad for us in Broward to lose that. So just this idea of sometimes when a place when it's recognized for its value, then what happens to it? Does it end up like losing those things in the process? So that's this one, and then finally, some of my other solar plates that are in there are about the Hollywood Beach Hotel. So this one is considered a historic building, so it's a little bit different than some of my other work. It does have the plaque on the door. It's a hotel that was built in 1925 in Hollywood by Joseph Young. It was the second hotel in Hollywood. The first historic hotel in Hollywood has been destroyed. And I don't know, maybe I'll start getting interested more in the historic buildings, because I feel like here in South Florida, that plaque doesn't always mean something. A lot of times you think, well, it's a protected place, but it often isn't protected. So I always knew this one was there. I always thought it was beautiful and interesting. It's had an interesting evolution. It became a Bible college, and then it went back to becoming a hotel, but they turned part of the hotel into Ocean Walk, which was shopping, and then it became timeshares, and so it's gone through a lot of evolution on its own. But then I had heard rumors that it was endangered, things weren't looking good. I went to visit, I was thrown out, and then the next day a green fence came around it, and that's never good news. The fence has been up for about a year. It was weird. The first day that I went to visit it, I'm taking pictures, and this guy comes by, and he's like, it'll be torn down in a year, and he left. And that was a little more than a year ago. It's still there, but it's kind of endangered. So I made, these were a bit larger. They're larger than postcards, but they're still solar plate. So it's 3 different images that I took of the exterior and the one of the interior before I got thrown out. And then I overlaid it with wintergreen oil transfer with vintage ads. There's just like so much like printed material and ads about this place. And I overlaid those with wintergreen oil transfer. So I like that both in a way are printmaking. One is more like process oriented and, you know, takes a lot of like time, money, and energy, and it's really finicky. And then the wintergreen oil transfer is like really easy and fun. It's essentially just you make a photocopy that is horizontally flipped, and you rub wintergreen essential oil on it, and it transfers. So I love how like easy and accessible that is, and then everything's kind of smells like Pepto-Bismol, but it's at least it's not like toxic fumes. And that's it for me. Thank you. And that's the you're up.
I have Roscoe be the third. I'm kind of going off script a little bit. Don't kill me, Phoebe.
Oh, you're good.
Phoebe, don't kill me, Phoebe.
No, you're good.
Phoebe, don't kill me. I think I want to show a part of a film that helps to inform you guys of the work. I think that'd be good, so we just get into the work.
Art Love is brought to you by our longtime content partner, Light Arts, is celebrating a big win, a Suncoast Regional Emmy Award for its art film 1402, Pork and Bean Blue. The emotional film by Oolite fellow Juan Luis Matos follows Miami-based photographer and visual artist Roscoè B. Thické on his journey to hold on to a sense of home and a sense of place.
I remember Easter's at my grandmother's house. The whole family go to church that morning, dressed to the nines, beautiful. I mean, my sisters would have on their Easter dresses, ruffled socks, black hat leather shoes. Me and my brother and my cousin would have on our little suits, vests, cover buns sometimes. At the church, we go back to my grandmother's house. And she had all type of food. I'm talking macaroni and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, all of the things. We would change into our play clothes, and we went back out, and the adults had all set of Easter eggs all through the yard. It was like humongous, y'all. So just this vivid memory of me running through that clothesline, trying to find these eggs all over the backyard. Me fighting my cousins, I'm trying to get past them, trying to find an egg. My mom and my aunts just watching us, just laughing and enjoying the time. And just that feeling that you feel, like even when I think about it now, like it feels so good. And I know they enjoyed it because I enjoy doing that type of stuff with my kids. My name is Roscoè B. Thické. I'm a photographer, visual artist, father, husband, son, grandson, veteran, brother, other. I'm all things. I've always photographed that house because the people there, the house itself, the neighborhood has so much history, so much richness, so much beautifulness. Generations of the family have come through the house. Almost everybody in the family has lived in that house at some point in their life. I think when I first picked up a camera, it was to capture beauty. I was in South Korea. They had mountains, they had snow, they had people that looked nothing like me, houses that looked nothing like me, rice fields, just all these things that was new to me. I think I use photography as a tool to honor legacy. I feel like it's my obligation. Like everybody I know from Miami didn't get a chance to leave Miami. So me coming back with this perspective, with this information, with this new way of seeing, I want to kind of give it back to them. I want to show them they are amazing, that their experiences are worth something, that what they're going through, their everyday lives are part of this history and should be documented forever and ever. When I first came back to Miami, I was going to care stay with my cousin. His whole situation, he was going in, he had just got out of jail, he was on house arrest, and me just feeling the power in the situation. While I'm shooting him, I'm having a conversation with my grandma. She's going back and forth to the hospital, getting sicker and sicker. At one point, she can't even move off the couch. While I'm doing all the work with my family, I see the projects in front of our house get torn down, and I realize, what's next? My grandmother, Irene Elizabeth Love, she was a cornerstone of not just my family, the whole neighborhood. She lived in the house for a very long time. The thing about my grandmother, she was the glue that kept the family together. When you have something generational, people come, people go, but you always want somewhere to come as home. And that was always home. Even if you didn't live there, grandma's house was home. I remember rumors years before that they were going to tear up Poker Bean projects and never seen the action. So I didn't think it was real. But then I remember seeing part of the projects getting demolished. And like, I didn't really think it could happen to my grandma's house. I didn't really think it was actually possible that my grandmother's house wasn't there until she passed away. I felt a sense of anxiety throughout the family. Like, when I actually saw Monty Clarita, Uncle Timmy, Dre, have to move from that 5-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom apartment, I was like, wow, this is really happening. Like, and me just wondering, thinking like, how would our family move forward? We can't celebrate Thanksgiving in this 2-bedroom house. We can't come over here for New Year's Day and have shrimp and grits like we usually do. Like we can't come over here and just chill after something happens, because this is an apartment, it's a 2-bedroom apartment. The whole dynamic of the whole family is gonna change.
Grief, deep sorrow, especially that caused by someone's death. Grief, the one thing holding you back from moving on. Grief, missing someone who doesn't miss you back. Grief, a piece of your soul floating away without you noticing. Grief, something that hits you out of thin air like a bullet to the head. Unexpected and unfortunate is how you describe it. I can't help but miss the times and memories we had in this place we once called home. It's empty now, gone, and the memories with it slowly fading away without our consent. Lord, I don't want to forget. Please, don't let me forget. Oh, grief, if only we know when you'd hit.
When I'm not taking photos, I'm raising my 3 amazing kids. I'm coaching football, basketball, track, or wrestling. I'm at the beach, yoga with my daughter. I'm riding bikes with my daughter. I'm playing basketball with my boys. I'm fathering. I'm doing something community-oriented. I think being on these things allows me to portray intimacy within my work. Helps me to associate with people, because I've been in a lot of places and spaces. I've lived a lot of lives. I've done it all. But I think, especially with the working with kids, it gives me some type of empathy, gives me some type of open-mindedness to be in any and every situation, and somehow able to find common ground where people are able to trust me, believe in me, and just know who I am.
Yeah, so I think like in order to know my work, I think that's a good place to start at. So there's certain things within my work, like this color. The name of the film, 1402 Poker Bean Blue. And for me, my grandma's house was that particular blue. In Miami, our projects are different colors. It's pink, yellow, green. But the one my grandma stayed in was blue. So like that's all I remember that blue. And when I was young, it was one color, and now it's another color. So like it's changed over years. So that's a little bit about my bio. And I do a lot of, I call myself a lens-based artist because I work in front of the camera, behind the camera. I make custom frames, all to try to get the image of what I'm trying to say out into the world. This is a trip pic I did of, I think it was like a year anniversary after my grandmother died. And we had brought this lantern from Amazon. And what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to light it, it's supposed to go up in the air, but it didn't go in the air. So he was trying to light it, so he kept lighting it, trying to throw it up. And I'm behind him with my camera, just wow, this is like a beautiful ritual that he's doing. The ritual, trying to let the balloon up, trying to let it land up. So for me, it just felt like a whole spiritual thing. So I started taking pictures of him trying to do it, and for me, it was just this beautiful, amazing urban ritual that he was trying to do, trying to release that balloon, commemorate passing. This was a dick pic I did of outside the 1402 house too. It's the same image twice, two different pictures. But once it's focused on the older lady, and once it's focused on the younger woman. And the name of the dick pic is Shifting Arrangements. And for me, it's trying to show like giving people their flowers at each part of life. I was fortunate enough to be. My dad was in his last days on hospice. I was fortunate enough to go to his house, feed him, change his diaper, do them things for him, and he'd be like, "Thank you, son, for feeding me. Thank you, son, for changing my diaper." All the things that I did for him, he did for me when I was young. So like, I feel like I was blessed in a way for that whole arrangement of father and son to shift. Well, now he's thanking me for the same thing I thanked him for 30 some odd years ago. So this was 2 photos, and also painting on the glass with like this glass paint that was able like 3D and some purple paint. So like this 3D, and it gave like the stained glass effect, but it wasn't quite stained glass. It was like a stained glass effect on top of the image. So those types of that. This was a piece I did called Irish Legacy. I used the actual the window grate in the projects. They had this window grate over every house in the every window in the house. So like you seen the whole perspective of the world through this grate. That grate is also like part of my work now that you see outside. Like so, I think at this time I was really focused on like the outside and the gentrification, different things that was happening on the house. You know what I'm saying? And I think like through my practice, I start viewing things from the outside in, like from what the outside happens to the inside, from the inside, like being inside the house, being inside the room, and seeing the world through that lens. This is a piece I did for an exhibition called Bounce, and the theme of the show was bounce, like trying to capture what bounce means to you. And this was like it took me back to the time where my parents would come over back in the day, and they had wooden speakers, and they would jam in the living room and just playing on top of music. So like for me, it was a way of opening up the family, opening up the house to the viewer. So I had 3 images inside there, and separated a speaker from the speaker box. And you see my custom pink polka bean blue color. That's like my signature of all my work. I did this piece. This is similar to the piece outside. These are 38 by 54 PVC pipe, and it's the same idea. Like I went from thinking outside in and how the outside forces affect me and growing up the period to how I see myself through these things. So this is a dick pic, and like it's called dreams and nightmare perception. So like it's like 2 different routes one can take being grown up inside that type of environment. And that's it. So that's how you reach me. Kandy, amazing Kandy.
Hey guys, you guys still, you good? Yeah? Okay, I'm gonna try to make mine quick because I know it's gonna be 7 o'clock. So.
There's no one in this space afterwards, so we can go over a little bit if we need to.
No, I don't. So I'm Kandy. I was born in Jersey. I moved down to Hialeah, Florida after my parents divorced. I say all this because it influences my work. I went to a magnet middle school, Northern Middle, which is in Opelika, Florida. I met my best friends there, and part of magnet schools, they try to get you to the best high schools so that eventually you can get to the best colleges. So I got into New Orleans School of the Arts, which is in downtown Miami. And while I was there, I was creating work. I was not born an artist. I was taught how to create, as in practice, technique. And I'd like to preface that because I teach also, so I'm a professor at Nova Southeastern University, and I'm all about the technical aspect. Once you can figure that out, then we can get into the conceptual part of it. So this is an image that I made when I was, I think, in 9th grade. It's an important image because this is the first time that I felt like I can draw. And it's on cardboard, it's charcoal and Conti, and it's an image of my best friend, who's still my best friend today. Her name is Janae. And this is us taking a tri-rail to get to New World. So I grew up in Miami Gardens. I would wake up at 5, take the bus, get to the Tri-Rail station by 6:20, get off in Government Center, which is in downtown Miami, and then get to school by 7:25, leave school at 3:45 and repeat the process, and I'll get home by 5:30. So it was 12 hours of doing this kind of commute. And this is just an image of that. By the time I finished high school, I decided to go to MICA, which is Maryland Institute College of Art. The market crashed in 2007. My mom lost her job. As a single parent, I thought it was my responsibility too to figure out what the heck I was gonna do in my life. And art wasn't it. Just like a lot of young kids, you're like, you hear people saying, how are you gonna make money in the arts? Like, it doesn't make sense. So I decided to come back to Florida, and I went to the University of South Florida in Tampa, where I did business for a year and became extremely depressed. So when I was not in my dorm, I was outside painting, and then someone came and said, oh, you're part of the art program. I didn't even know USF had an art program. So I applied, and I ended up getting my BFA in painting, and also my BS in marketing and management, because I knew by then that I wanted to be in the arts. I just needed a backup plan to feel secure, which is where the business part came in. These are some paintings that I did while I was there, so I'm really interested in painting us and representing us in spaces where we don't see ourselves. And these paintings are pretty large, they're 3 by 4 feet. By the time I was in undergrad, I knew that I wanted to teach because the teachers had summers off. And I thought that was incredible. And they also had a studio space, which means that they had time to make work. As an artist, I want time to make work. So I ended up getting my MFA here at FAU. Ooh, go Owls.
Go Owls.
And this is one of the pieces that I created when I was here. I think it's one of the most important pieces that I made. It's on tilted film, which is like cartons. So you can see yourself in the space and also behind the space because it's transparent. So you see the light that's at the top, that's actually the light behind in the gallery. So people are literally inside of this composite of Opa-locka. So like different spaces in Opa-locka, and it's presented in a space that's predominantly white. So I enjoy seeing us in spaces, again, where we don't see ourselves, and seeing people in spaces where they don't see themselves either. I also did a lot of drawings, so again, composites of Miami, neighborhoods that you would know, barbecue places that you would know, botanicas that you would know, if you lived inside of these spaces. At the same time, I was creating prints. I really enjoy people that have swagger. I think that there's just certain people that walk into the room and you're like, who is that? And that is what I'm interested in. And usually we start having like a conversation, and then there's, you know, times on when we're gonna model and all these things. But these are just examples of some of my prints of the same person that I met on Instagram, because Instagram is something special. At the same time, I was creating collages. This is the first time that a piece of string fell on one of my collages in the studio. This is when thread started coming into my work, and it was haphazard, so it was an accident in the studio. That accident led me to go to Michael's and buy more thread that I needed, and then there was a little canvas next to those threads, and as a painter, I'm like, So I connected the dots, and I started making these really small portraits of people that I found interesting. Again, this is still Lauren, so I have become obsessed with this girl that I have not met in person who lives in Compton. Like, I am obsessed, and she knows. But you can tell, like, I was trying to understand how to pull the thread because there's still bunches that are in some areas. So after FAU, I got a full-time position at Daytona State in Daytona Beach. And this is when Trayvon Martin was happening. This is when like Black Lives Matter became something that's extremely important. By that point, I met my husband, who's also Black and Cuban, so another Afro-Caribbean like myself. And I thought about what it meant to be erased after the fact. So I was already working in fiber, and I thought I wanted to make a piece that was more political, where people literally have to immerse themselves in it. So this was eventually a rug. So the backing is a rug. My piece, there's a piece out here that you can see where the woman with the long dress, that's the backing. And he was meant to be placed on the floor. So people were meant to literally step on him to the point where like he's erased from all of the stepping. Eventually I started making work where color became important. So this was the first 12-foot piece that I made out of repurposed clothing and also yarn. These are some more pieces that I've created. So I'm thinking about the unraveling and the fading and the erasure of us, but also in a beautiful way. Thinking about paint drips, even with yarn, because I think I'm painting, I'm just painting with yarn. These are some more examples. One of the things that I really love taking up pictures of is the back of the pieces, because I feel like the back of the piece not only shows labor, but it also talks about violence within the piece. So this is an example of one of those pieces. It's also important for me for community to show up in these spaces. So these are some of the models that showed up for some of the exhibitions. Miyaku and Henri, so this one and this one, they were walking around in an art exhibition, and I became obsessed with what they had on. So you have to like find the courage to be like, hey, I'm not a weird middle-aged woman. I'm an artist. Here's my Instagram, so you could like, it's legit, right? And then the next year they came back to the same show, the fair, and they saw themselves with their family. It was the whole big thing, and then they became celebrities. I actually made a piece of Roscoè that's inside the show, so if you haven't seen it, come back and look at it. Another celebrity. I think that's my last slide. I hope that was 10 minutes.
You're good. Here, I got it. You're good.
Alrighty.
And we're gonna open up the floor for Q&A. I think we'll be okay with that.
We're gonna open up for short Q&A, so if you have any questions, raise your hand, and our artists will answer them for you. Speak up a little bit, none of our moving microphones are working. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, if anyone would like to start.
No, you guys are over it already?
Miss Angel.
I think I can talk loud enough.
Yes.
Kandy,
Yes?
I love the backs of your pieces, and you just said that you thought that they portrayed violence, and I don't see them, or violent, and I don't see, did I hear you right?
Yeah.
I don't see that. Could you explain that a little bit more?
The first time that I made it back when it was just a face, I thought about the Emmett Till image.
Okay.
And the erasure of what that image looks like.
Okay.
So when I'm depicting us, I think about those things in the back of the piece. The front looks pretty and beautiful, but the back is showing a different thing.
When I'm looking at it, I'm not necessarily thinking that. I'm looking at the
work.
technique, the texture, and the color blending, etc. So I was very curious when you said that. So thank you.
Also, Kandy, about the same thing. I saw the violence, but I also saw you talk a lot about how at the front about the erasure. So you have those missing moments with that thread, and I see that in the back as well. Since you're skipping around a lot, so you have that mix of violence as well as erasure in the back there. And then I have another question, both for Greko and Roscoè. What cameras do you guys use?
It's really a gamut. Depends what I'm shooting and what look I'm going for, but 16mm film sometimes. If I'm shooting digital, it's like an RE or Blackmagic, if you know what those cameras are.
I shoot everything is filming me. Right now, I'm shooting Monica. I'm shooting Monica medium format. Most of my work is medium format. Some 35, but everything's from shoot?
16 millimeter. Just for texture, and there's like an abstraction to it.
What's some of the difficulties that doing 16 shoot with 16 millimeter?
It's kind of like a crapshoot, you know. You're kind of like working in like a documentary way, especially where there's no time to measure, like use a light meter. You're kind of just like honing in estimation of what exposure is, but that's where like the interesting things come from, like these happy accidents.
Alright guys, I saw like a thread in the work that was about like memory and like the erasure of like things of like nostalgia or things that comfort or like that type of thing. I was wondering, like it's getting replaced now with a bunch of things that like I feel have like a little bit less of a soul. Do you think in like 50 years when that stuff gets torn down that people will be documenting that?
Definitely, I think things of today are, I don't want to say accidentally, but like we didn't know a cassette player was gonna be this antique vintage thing. We thought we had a new Walkman. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing now. Like the iPhone 16 is amazing now, but 15 years from now, iPhone 6, what? Like, so I think now people are using things now, and you don't appreciate anything right now. I think you said when you went to that place when you were young, you wish you would have took photos. You never appreciate things in the time. So I think it's always afterwards you look at it, man, that was amazing. I wish we had that.
Are you referencing technology, or?
I'm referring to like the style leaving, like the individuality leaving, like these hand painted signs. It's like this kind of thing. It's like not, I don't see it around, or it's getting erased, or it's getting demolished. And I'm wondering with the stuff that it's getting replaced with, if that's gonna still have like this South Florida soul.
Oh, you're talking about like.
I'm talking about like the new bridge.
Design.
I'm talking about the new bridge. I'm talking
exactly
about
like the globalizational kind of like. I see what you're saying, like architecture and all that. Okay, yeah.
It'll be for that generation.
Yeah.
So they'll figure it out. That's a good question. I didn't thought about it that way. Another question?
I have a question. If you could all give one little tiny piece of advice, since we have a lot of students in here, to potential future artists, what would it be?
Work. Be in your studio. Things happen in there that you might not expect. That can change everything. So just working as much as you can.
Yeah, I think I second that. I think it's always in the work. Everything else, like, it's always in the work. Like, the work speaks for itself. The work go places you can't go. So always trust in the work and do the work.
Definitely got a third the work. But also because that's when you find what you want to make work about is from working.
Yeah.
And also like give yourself permission to make work about things that you might think other people will think is not important or not special or not worth making work about. If it's something that means something to you, like give yourself permission.
Don't say work.
I'm gonna end on kind of a downer. I would say that if you are good at anything else, if you enjoy anything else, do that. Because the life of an artist is not easy, and it's a big responsibility, you know, because you are reflecting society. You're sort of showing the shadow of everything, and you just have to really, you can't not do anything else, you know what I mean? Like, it has to be something that comes from within you. And so, you know, I say this all the time to filmmakers, like, do something else if you're good at something else, because it's like tough. But, you know, we do it because, I mean, at least I can't do anything else, so.
Yeah.
Let me give you a chance to bring it back up. So you said in your how do you identify who is going to be featured in the films? And once you do that, how do you go into the mining of the memories? What kind of questions do you ask? Do you ask questions or do you just allow them?
No, of course, yeah, no, that's an important part of the process. So cinema to me is sort of an art of presence, and you know, you are depicting some sort of reality, whether it's constructed or not. And so the first thing is sort of like a intuitive feeling with someone, and it's about sensation for me. It's sort of like what I'm trying to say with the work or with the piece. And then it has to be someone, like the same way that a more traditional filmmaker would have a certain requirement from someone, whether it's a certain look or something. They go through a casting process. I also go through a casting process, but the sort of end thing is something different. And because I consider cinema sort of this art of presence, like I don't necessarily think that the most authentic presence comes from an actor, if that makes sense.
Anyone else?
Did you yeah. For these projects, how long, like, does it usually take you?
I'm very impatient, so a week or two. And if it's longer than 2 weeks, I'm really upset because I have like multiple, I give myself deadlines, so I have like multiple images I want to work on. And if it's taking longer than I want the current one to take, it unmotivates me to start the next one, because in my brain I'm like, that's a dumb idea. So if the faster that I work, the more I get to like the sparking new idea to see if it's interesting or not.
Yeah.
I have another question. So a lot of you do, community programming, or your professors. How do you balance your teaching life with your studio life?
Ain't no balance. Ain't no balance. I mean, you go hard at this time, then you go hard at that time, and hopefully at the end of the day, I mean, like in your life or in your career, you know what I'm saying? There's some type of balance in it, but ain't no balance. You just go do what you gotta do.
You're either like a B professor and a C mom, or a C professor and a B mom. You know, it's always like, when I'm in the studio, I'm thinking about my family. And when I'm with my family, I'm thinking about the studio. So it's difficult.
But isn't that a woman working in general? Isn't that the issue for
Right,
women
always
working
balancing.
anyway?
It's the guilt.
I think you gotta do things in chunks, and just remember you live many lifetimes in one life. So sometimes, you know, like when I had my babies, oh my God, I'm not making enough art, but that doesn't mean like I'm not an artist anymore. Then they're gonna get older, and then I'll make more art. And with teaching, you know, there's frustrations and there's all those things, but there's also like, I don't know, you guys give me life. Phoebe was a student of mine. So yeah, it's that can be inspiring too.
Any other questions?
I don't know if I have a question or a comment.
Yeah.
I found first of all, with Roscoè, and I don't remember your name, all three of you, because I'm not from Florida. And whenever you hear about history of Florida, all you hear is the highwaymen. Highwaymen. So I really appreciate it. I have a friend that grew up in Miami. So I heard a lot about Miami from her, Liberty City. But I really appreciated the way you showed the touristy side of Florida. Because when I was growing up, you always heard about people mining swampland in Florida, you know. But to show a history, because you don't see history in Florida. Like you go to New York, we have historical buildings. You don't see that here. You blink, They built something over there, you know, I've been here since 2003, and if you blink, you're like, what happened? You know, so I appreciate the way you're preserving the real history, the soul of what Miami was. Like this, like I'm so inundated with Highland, like that was it, these poor guys on the road painting beach pictures. You know, so I really appreciated seeing these different views of what Miami used to be. For you, you just blew me away, because I crocheted since I'm 9 years old, and I paint. And I thought so much about incorporating them together. So to see you do it the way you did it is really amazing to me.
Any other questions? All right, I want to thank you guys so much for coming and joining us. It's been a delight having you all,